There's one account sitting in your retirement right now that the IRS is quietly counting on you to leave completely alone. Not most accounts. One specific kind, and here's the strange part. They are not hoping you spend it. They are not hoping you lose it. They are hoping you do absolutely nothing with it, that you let it sit there, year after year, growing bigger and bigger, untouched, while you feel proud of how large the number is getting. Because the bigger that one account grows while you ignore it, the more of it the IRS eventually gets to keep. And almost nobody realizes the trap until it is far too late to do anything about it. I'm talking about your traditional retirement account, your traditional IRA, or your old 401k, the tax-deferred money you spent your whole working life building up. For decades you were told this was the smart move. Put money in, get a tax break today, let it grow, worry about the taxes later. And on the surface that sounds wonderful. But there is a sentence hiding inside that deal that nobody ever says out loud, and once you hear it, you will never look at that account the same way again. That account is not entirely yours. You have a silent partner in it, and that partner is the IRS. Every single dollar in there has a slice already promised to the government, a slice you have not paid yet. And the longer you let it grow untouched, the bigger their slice grows right alongside yours. But here is where it gets interesting. And here is why this matters so much the moment you turn 59 and a half. On that birthday, a door quietly opens. For the first time in your life, you can finally reach into that account without the 10% early withdrawal penalty that guarded it for all those years. And that means you finally get a window, a precious and limited window, to take control of that account, to buy out your silent partner on your terms at today's rates, instead of leaving it to grow until the IRS comes and takes their share on their terms all at once later in life when you have the least flexibility to do anything about it. So today I'm going to show you exactly why this one account is the one the IRS hopes you never touch, how the trap is built, what happens if you do nothing, and the specific moves that quietly turn that ticking account from a future tax bomb into one of the most controllable parts of your entire retirement. And I promise you, by the end of this, you are going to understand your own money in a way that most people never do. And you are going to see exactly why 59 and a half is the most important window you have. Now, maybe your traditional account has $100,000 in it. Maybe it has $500,000, maybe more. It honestly does not matter. The trap works exactly the same way at every size, just with bigger or smaller numbers. So whether you are sitting on a large balance you are quietly proud of, or a modest one you are still building, or you are simply helping someone you love understand their retirement, this is for you. Stay with me to the end, because the part about what happens at age 73 is the part that changes everything. And I want to say one thing up front, so there's no confusion. None of this is about some loophole or trick or gray area. Everything I'm about to show you is written plainly in the rules, available to anyone who knows to look. The only reason it feels like a secret is that the people whose job it is to inform you have very little reason to. There is a whole industry built around helping you put money into that account. There is almost no one whose job is to help you take it back out wisely. That silence is not an accident, and it is exactly the silence we are going to break together right now. Because once you truly understand what that account is, you stop seeing a number to protect and start seeing a job to manage. And that shift from guarding the account to actively steering it is the entire difference between the people who quietly keep their money and the people who hand a fortune to the IRS without ever realizing they had a choice. And before we go any further, a quick but important note. I am not a lawyer, I am not a CPA, and I am not your financial advisor. Everything in this video is for educational purposes only. My job here is to help you understand the rules and ask better questions, not to give you personal advice for your exact situation. If that sounds fair, do me one small favor right now. Tap the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach other people who are sitting on this exact account without ever realizing what it really is. And if you have not subscribed yet, take 1 second and subscribe, because the kind of thing we cover here is exactly what nobody bothers to explain until it is too late. Alright, let us pull back the curtain on this account. First, let us be crystal clear about which account we are talking about and why it is different from everything else. When you save for retirement, your money tends to live in one of a few very different kinds of accounts, and they are not created equal in the eyes of the IRS. There is your regular savings, money you have already paid tax on, sitting in the bank or in a normal investment account. When you use that money, there is no surprise waiting, because the tax is already done. Then there is your Roth, which is the friendliest of all, because you paid the tax going in, and from then on it grows and comes out completely tax-free. And then there is the big one, the traditional account, your traditional IRA and your 401k. And this one is the opposite of the Roth. You never paid tax on this money. Not on the dollars you put in, not on the growth, not on a single cent of it. You got a deduction the year you contributed, and the tax was simply pushed down the road. That word, deferred, is the whole game. People hear deferred, and they think it means avoided. It does not. Deferred means delayed. It means the bill is still coming, you just have not received it yet. And here is the part that should make you sit up straight. When you defer tax on that money, you are not avoiding the IRS. You are agreeing to settle up later, at a future tax rate that nobody can promise you, on a balance that will likely be much larger than it is today. You made a deal with a silent partner, and the terms of that deal are written in their favor, not yours. So think about what that really means. Every dollar in your traditional account is actually two pieces stitched together. There is your piece, the part you truly get to keep. And there is the IRS piece, the part that has always belonged to them, sitting there quietly, waiting. You just cannot see the line that divides them. And here's the cruel little twist that almost nobody understands. As that account grows, both pieces grow. Your savings get bigger, yes, but so does the slice the IRS is waiting to collect. You're not just growing your own money. You are growing theirs too. Let me make that real with a simple way to think about it. Imagine your traditional account shows a balance that looks like a nice round, comforting number on your statement. Most people look at that number and think, that is what I have. But that is not what you have. That is what you and the IRS have together. Your real number, the part you actually get to keep, is whatever is left after the tax is finally paid. And because nobody can tell you exactly what tax rates will be years from now, you genuinely do not know your own real number. You are staring at a balance that is part yours and part theirs, with an invisible moving line dividing the two. That is an uncomfortable thing to sit with, but it is the honest truth of a tax-deferred account. And think about why the IRS was so happy to hand you that tax break in the first place all those years ago. It was not generosity. It was a calculation. They let you skip the tax on a smaller amount back then, when your contributions were modest, knowing they would get to tax a much larger amount later, after decades of growth. They traded a small bite now for a much bigger bite later. From their side, it was a brilliant deal. They became a silent investor in your account, one who never put in a single dollar, never took any risk, and yet owns a growing share of everything your discipline built. The better your account performs, the better their investment performs at your expense. And the longer you leave it untouched, the more you fatten up the very slice they are going to take. Number 2, why doing nothing feels so smart and why that is exactly the trap. Here is what makes this so dangerous. Leaving that account alone does not feel like a mistake. It feels like the responsible thing to do. Everything you have ever been taught about money points the same direction. Let it grow. Do not touch your retirement early. Be patient. Let compounding work its magic, and for the most part, that is good advice, which is exactly why this trap is so effective. It hides inside good behavior. The very discipline that built that account is the same discipline that keeps you from ever questioning whether you should start drawing it down. So most people do the natural thing. They cross into their 60s, they retire, and they live carefully off their Social Security and maybe their regular savings, doing everything they can to avoid touching that big traditional account, treating it like a sacred emergency fund they hope to never crack open. They feel responsible, they feel proud, and the whole time in the background, that account just keeps growing, and the IRS slice inside it keeps growing right along with it, getting fatter and fatter, completely unnoticed. And here is the part that the system is counting on. They are counting on you to keep that money sitting there, untouched and growing, all the way until the moment when you no longer have a choice. Because there comes an age when the government stops politely waiting and starts forcing you to pull that money out, whether you need it or not. And by then, the account is as big as it will ever be, which means the tax is as big as it will ever be, and your flexibility to do anything smart about it is almost completely gone. And notice how perfectly the conventional wisdom protects this trap. Everywhere you turn, the message is the same. Do not touch your retirement. Let it grow. Be patient. That advice is excellent while you are still working and building. But almost nobody tells you that the advice has to flip at some point, that there comes a season when the smartest move is to start carefully drawing that account down on your own terms. So people apply the building phase rules deep into the spending phase, treating a 65-year-old account exactly like a 35-year-old one. They keep feeding the beast long after they should have started taming it. There is also a powerful emotional pull at work. That account often represents a lifetime of sacrifice, every skipped luxury, every careful choice, every year of saying not yet. Touching it can feel like undoing all of that, like admitting the saving is finally over. So people leave it sealed, almost out of respect for the person they used to be. It is a beautiful instinct. It is also exactly the instinct the system relies on, because that respect, that refusal to touch it, is precisely what lets the account, and the tax buried inside it, swell to its largest possible size. The trap is not that they take your money. The trap is that they get you to grow it for them first. Let me ask you something right now, and answer honestly in your own head. Have you been treating your big traditional retirement account like money you should avoid touching for as long as humanly possible? If yes, type the word yes in the comments. If you have already been drawing it down on purpose, type no. I read these, and I have a strong feeling the vast majority of people are going to be typing yes, because that is exactly what we are all taught to do. Number 3, the bomb. What actually happens at age 73? This is the moment everything you have been quietly building toward comes due, and it is the part the IRS is really counting on. For most people today, around the age of 73, and even later, if you were born in 1960 or after, the government requires you to start pulling money out of that traditional account every single year. These forced withdrawals are called required minimum distributions, and the word required is the key. You do not get to decide whether to take them. You do not get to decide if this is a good tax year for it. The rules decide for you, and the amount they force out grows as you get older. Now picture what that does to someone who spent 20 years carefully not touching their account, letting it grow as large as possible. By the time those forced withdrawals begin, the balance is enormous, which means the required amount they must pull out is enormous too. And all of that money lands on their tax return as ordinary income all at once, every year on top of everything else they have coming in. And this is where the real damage happens, because it is not just one tax. It is a chain reaction that forced income stacks right on top of your Social Security, and once your income climbs high enough, it can drag more and more of your Social Security benefit into the taxable column, up to 85% of it. So now you are paying tax on the forced withdrawal, and you are paying more tax on your Social Security because of it. Then that same income can push you into a higher tax bracket, so even your other dollars get taxed harder. And then, because Medicare looks back 2 years at your income to set your premiums, those big forced withdrawals can raise your Medicare costs as well, through a surcharge called the income-related monthly adjustment amount. One forced withdrawal, and the bill arrives from 3 or 4 different directions at once. And here is the cruelest part of all, the part that almost nobody plans for. When there are 2 spouses, you have wider tax brackets, and you can spread income across them as a couple. But after one spouse is gone, the survivor often has to file alone, on much narrower single brackets, while still being forced to pull that same large required income out of the account every year. So the surviving spouse can get hit with dramatically higher taxes at the most fragile, most difficult time of their life, all because that account was left to grow untouched for too long. Let me walk you through how this snowballs in plain words, because the timing makes it worse than people expect. The forced withdrawals are calculated as a slice of your account balance, and that slice gets larger every year as you age. So it is not a flat amount. It starts as one portion of a very large balance, and then grows into an even bigger portion as the years go on. For someone who let their account swell for decades, that means the forced income often climbs higher and higher, right through their 70s and 80s, exactly the years when they may also be facing rising health costs and the loss of a spouse. The pressure does not ease with age. By design, it intensifies. And here is a picture that makes it concrete. Imagine someone who reaches their 70s with a very large traditional account, far larger than they could ever spend in a single year. The government does not care that they do not need the money. It forces them to pull out a big chunk anyway. So they are dragged into a higher tax bracket for money they did not even want to withdraw. Money that now just sits in their regular savings, already taxed, doing nothing but creating more taxable income down the line. They are taxed for the crime of having been disciplined. In a very real sense, they are punished for saving too much in the one account the IRS was always planning to collect from. And every dollar of that pain traces straight back to a single decision, the decision to leave the account untouched through all those gap years when it could have been quietly drained at low rates. The IRS does not mind one bit. In fact, that is the outcome they were quietly counting on the whole time now. Before I show you how to diffuse all of this, let me pause for a moment, because if you are the kind of person who wants to understand exactly how these rules apply to your own situation, I have something that can help. I put together a resource called the Retiree's AI Research Guide. It walks you through how to research your own retirement and tax questions step by step, so you can understand exactly how your accounts, your withdrawals, and your future taxes fit together before you ever sit down with a professional. You can find it over at kevinretires.shop. Now let me be completely clear about what it is and what it is not. It does not replace a good accountant or financial advisor, and it is not meant to. It is simply a tool to help you walk into those conversations as the most informed person in the room, instead of nodding along to things you do not fully understand. The link is in the description if you want it. Alright, now let me show you the window the IRS hopes you never use. Number 4, the one window. Why 59.5 changes everything. Here is the good news, and it is genuinely powerful. There is a window of time when you, and only you, hold the controls on that account. And it opens the day you turn 59.5. Because that is the day the 10% early withdrawal penalty finally disappears. Before that age, reaching into your traditional account meant getting hit with that penalty on top of regular tax, which is why most people would not dream of touching it early. But the moment you cross 59.5, that penalty is gone, and the account becomes truly accessible for the first time in your life. And that access is the key to everything, because it opens a stretch of years that is pure gold if you understand it. This window runs roughly from 59.5 until the year those forced withdrawals begin, around 73 for most people. The years in between are sometimes called the gap years, and they are the single most valuable, most overlooked opportunity in your entire retirement. Because in those years, before the government forces anything, you are in complete control of how much comes out of that account and when. Think about what that gives you. In those gap years, your other income may be lower. You might not have started Social Security yet, or you might be living partly on your regular savings, which means there is often empty room at the bottom of the tax brackets, room that is going completely to waste, and you can deliberately use that room. You can choose to pull money out of that traditional account, or better yet, convert it into a Roth in measured amounts at today's lower rates on purpose. Every dollar you move during these years is a dollar that will never become a forced withdrawal later. You are quietly buying out your silent partner, a slice at a time, at a price you control, instead of waiting for them to collect on their terms at 73. This is exactly the thing the IRS is hoping you never do. They are hoping you leave that account alone through your entire 60s. So it grows as large as possible, so their slice grows as large as possible, so the forced withdrawals later are as large as possible. The gap years are your chance to quietly disarm that whole plan, and understand just how patient and quiet this plan is from their side. They do not have to do anything at all, they do not send reminders, they do not warn you, They simply wait year after year while the natural pull of good advice and good intentions keeps your hands off that account. Inaction is their entire strategy, and inaction is the easiest thing in the world to get someone to do. That is what makes this the single most effective trap in all of retirement. It does not require you to make a mistake. It only requires you to do nothing, which feels like the safest choice of all. The quiet genius of it, from their side, is that you do the work, the waiting, and the worrying, and then you thank yourself for being so responsible right up until the bill arrives. Think of it like this. Your silent partner is willing to sell you their slice, but the price changes depending on when you buy. During the gap years, when your other income is low, you can buy out their share cheaply, at today's known relatively low tax rates, in small amounts you choose. Wait until 73 and you no longer get to negotiate at all. The forced withdrawals set the terms, the amounts are large, and they land in whatever bracket your stacked income pushes you into. You go from being a buyer who names the price to a seller with no leverage, handing over your share on the government schedule instead of your own. There is one more reason these years matter that often gets missed. Nobody can promise you what tax rates will be in the future. Many people quietly suspect that rates could end up higher down the road, not lower. If that turns out to be true, then every dollar you convert now, at today's rates, is a dollar you protected from a potentially bigger bill later. You are not just shrinking the account. You are locking in a known rate instead of gambling on an unknown future one. The gap years let you take that bet off the table on your terms, while you still can, and every single year you let slip by without using them is a year you can never get back. Let me ask you the second honest question of this video. Before today, did you understand that the years between 59 and a half and your forced withdrawals were a window you could actually use to lower your future taxes? Type yes or no in the comments. There's no judgment at all. Almost nobody has ever told this, and that silence is exactly the gap this channel exists to fill. And if this is starting to open your eyes, do me a favor and tap that like button one more time, because this is precisely the kind of strategy the system never bothers to explain. Number 5, how to actually take control of the account step by step. So let's get practical. How do you actually use this window to defuse the bomb? It comes down to a few careful, deliberate moves, and the art of it is patience. Before the specifics, hold this mindset, because it changes everything. You are not trying to win some big dramatic victory over the IRS in a single year. You are trying to quietly even the score over many years, a little at a time, so smoothly that no single year ever hurts. The people who do this well are not aggressive. They are patient and unglamorous. They treat it like tending a garden rather than fighting a battle, doing a small, sensible amount each season, year after year, until the thing that could have crushed them at 73 is barely a ripple. Boring, steady, and deliberate beats bold and reckless every single time with this account. And the earlier you adopt that mindset, the more seasons you get to work with, which is exactly why even one extra year of patient action is worth so much. The core idea is this. Every year during your gap years, you look at how much room is left inside the lower tax brackets before the rates jump up. Then you deliberately pull from or convert just enough of your traditional account to fill that low rate room and no more. You pay a modest, predictable tax now at a rate you chose on a controlled amount, then you do it again the next year and the next. Slowly, patiently, you are shrinking the future taxable bucket and, if you convert into a Roth, refilling the never taxed again bucket. You are turning a giant, unpredictable future tax bill into a series of small, manageable, planned ones. Let me put the difference into plain words so it really lands. Imagine two people with the same large traditional account at 59 and a half. The first does nothing, lets it grow, feels responsible. By 73, the forced withdrawals are enormous, stacking on Social Security, dragging that benefit into the taxable column, pushing brackets and Medicare premiums higher every single year for the rest of their life. The second person spent their gap years quietly converting and withdrawing modest amounts at low rates. By 73, their traditional balance is much smaller, so the forced withdrawals are much smaller. A big growing pile now sits safely in their tax-free Roth, and their whole tax picture in their 70s and 80s is lighter, calmer, and far more in their control. Same starting money. Completely different retirement. The only difference was using the window. Now, there is a beautiful bonus hiding in those early gap years that almost nobody knows about. Because Medicare only looks back 2 years at your income, any converting you do early enough before that look-back window can ever reach you does not touch your Medicare premiums at all. So the earliest years in your late 50s and very early 60s are some of the cheapest, most powerful years of your entire life to move this money because you can fill those low brackets with zero Medicare consequence whatsoever. It is a quiet head start, and it rewards the people who act early instead of waiting. But you have to respect the traps, because this is a tool that can backfire if you swing it carelessly. The first trap is doing too much at once. Every dollar you convert or withdraw is taxable in the year you do it, so if you grab a huge amount in a single year, you spike your own bracket, you may tax more of your Social Security, and once you are close to Medicare, you can trigger that surcharge yourself. The goal is measured, year by year, filling the low brackets without tipping into the high ones. The second trap is forgetting the order of your accounts. You usually have 3 kinds of money: your already taxed savings, your traditional account, and your Roth. Blending them thoughtfully, rather than draining one all at once, is how you keep your taxable income smooth and low while still living comfortably. And the third trap is draining the account dry in a panic. This is not about emptying it as fast as possible. It is about steadily, calmly reducing it over years. Let me add a couple of deeper levers for those who want them. One is the order in which you spend versus convert. In a low-income gap year, some people will actually live off their already taxed savings while converting traditional money into the Roth, because that keeps their taxable income low enough to convert more at the cheap rates. They are using one bucket to fund their daily life while quietly moving another bucket to permanent safety. It feels backwards to spend savings while leaving retirement money alone, but done deliberately, it can be one of the most powerful moves of all. Another lever, for those who are charitably inclined and a bit older, is giving directly from the traditional account to a cause they care about. Once you reach the right age, money sent straight from that account to a qualified charity can satisfy part of your forced withdrawal without ever landing on your tax return as income at all. So if you were going to give anyway, giving from the one account the IRS is waiting on can shrink that account and your future forced income at the same time, while doing real good. It is a quiet, elegant way to redirect a slice that would otherwise have grown into a tax bill. And let me give you a simple year-by-year feel for the patient version, so it does not sound complicated. In a calm year, you check the room left in your low brackets, convert a measured amount of traditional money into the Roth, and pay the small, predictable tax. The next year, you do it again. Some years, if your income happens to be higher, you do less or nothing at all. Some years, if your income is unusually low, you do more. You are not following a rigid formula. You are reading each year and moving with it, always with the same goal, to gently shrink the bomb and grow the tax-free bucket, without ever spiking yourself into a high bracket or a Medicare surcharge. It is less like one dramatic move and more like steadily letting the air out of a tire before it can ever blow. This is exactly the kind of multi-year decision where it is worth understanding the rules deeply, and ideally, reviewing your specific plan with a professional before you act. Let me paint a few quick pictures for you so all of this really comes together. Imagine the first person who never learns any of this. They retire, they are proud of their big traditional account, and they protect it like a treasure, refusing to touch it. They live carefully, they feel disciplined, and they wait. And then 73 arrives. The forced withdrawals begin, huge and unavoidable. Suddenly their income jumps, more of their Social Security becomes taxable, their Medicare premiums climb, and they find themselves writing tax checks they never saw coming every year with no way to stop it. They did everything they were told, and the IRS collected exactly the way it always planned to. Now imagine the second person who understood what that account really was. At 59 and a half, they recognized the window. Through their 60s, they quietly converted modest amounts into a Roth at low rates, filling the empty brackets on purpose, paying small, predictable taxes along the way. By 73, their forced withdrawals are gentle instead of crushing. A large tax-free Roth sits ready for whenever they need it. Their Social Security is protected, their Medicare premiums stay low, and the surviving spouse, when that day eventually comes, is not buried under forced income on narrow single brackets, but is instead protected by a calm, tax-free pile of money that was prepared with love during those quiet gap years. Same starting point. Two completely different stories. The only difference was knowing what that account was and acting while the window was open. And here is the one I really want you to sit with. That window does not stay open forever. Every year you spend not using it is a year gone. A year where you could have bought out your silent partner cheaply and chose to wait instead. The people who win are not the ones with the biggest accounts. And let me give you one more picture, for anyone who feels like they may have already waited too long. Imagine someone who only learns all of this at 64, well into their gap years, feeling a pang of regret that they did not start sooner. Here is the truth. They have not missed it. They still have years before their forced withdrawals begin, years they can use right now to convert and draw down at controlled rates. They cannot get back the years they did not use, but the window is still open, and a few good years of action are far better than none. The worst outcome is not starting late. The worst outcome is never starting at all, and letting the whole account roll untouched into 73. So no matter your age, if that window is still open even a crack, the move is the same. Use the time you have left. They are the ones who understood early that a big untouched traditional account is not a finished trophy, is an unpaid bill that is quietly growing, and the gap years are the one chance to settle it on your own terms. Let me bring it all together, because I want this clear in your mind. There is one account the IRS quietly hopes you never touch, and it is your traditional IRA or 401k. It is not fully yours. It has a silent partner inside it, a slice of tax that has never been paid, and that slice grows every year you let the account grow untouched. Doing nothing feels responsible, which is exactly why the trap works, but doing nothing simply fattens up the share the government collects later. At around 73, the forced withdrawals begin, landing as ordinary income, dragging more of your Social Security into tax, lifting your brackets, raising your Medicare premiums, and threatening to crush the surviving spouse on narrow single brackets. But the day you turn 59 and a half, the 10% penalty disappears and a window opens, the gap years, where you and you alone control that account. And in those years, by steadily converting and withdrawing at low rates, especially in the earliest years when Medicare cannot even see it yet, you can buy out your silent partner a slice at a time, shrink the future bomb, and move your money into the tax-free bucket where the IRS can never touch it again. And I want to be clear about something, Because this is not about fear, and it is not about hating your traditional account. That account did its job. The tax break helped you save more during your working years, and the growth was real and valuable. The point is not that the account was a mistake. The point is that it comes with a second half almost nobody talks about, a settling up phase, and that phase has to be managed just as deliberately as the saving phase was. Most people pour enormous care into filling that account and then give zero thought to emptying it wisely. But the emptying is where fortunes are quietly won or lost. 59.5 is when that emptying phase can finally begin on your terms, and the gap years are when the real planning happens. Treat that stretch with the same intention you once gave to saving, and the very account the IRS was counting on becomes one of your greatest advantages instead of their quiet collection. So here is your simple checklist for the one account the IRS hopes you ignore. 1. Know exactly how much is sitting in your traditional accounts, and remind yourself that a portion of that number has never been yours. It belongs to the IRS, and it grows when the account grows. 2. Find your 59.5 date, because that is the day the penalty disappears and your window opens. 3. Map out your gap years, the stretch between 59.5 and the year your forced withdrawals begin, and treat those years as the precious, closing opportunity they are. 4. Each year, look at the room left in your lower tax brackets, and consider converting or withdrawing just enough of that traditional money to fill it, at a rate you control, without spiking into the high brackets or triggering a Medicare surcharge. 5. Take special advantage of the earliest gap years, in your late 50s and very early 60s, when conversions do not even touch your Medicare premiums yet. 6. Think in terms of all three buckets: your savings, your traditional account, and your Roth, and blend them on purpose so your taxable income stays smooth and low. 7. Do not try to do it all at once, and do not drain the account dry. This is a patient, multi-year plan, and it is exactly the kind of thing worth reviewing with a professional before you act. So let this be the moment the silence breaks for you. You now know there is one account in your retirement that is not fully yours, that quietly grows the government's share while you sleep, and that turns into a forced flood of taxable income the moment you reach 73 if you do nothing. And you also know the way out, the quiet window between 59.5 and those forced withdrawals, where you and you alone can buy back your share a slice at a time, at rates you control, especially in those early years when even Medicare cannot see it yet. The IRS is genuinely counting on you to ignore every word of this, and the single most powerful financial move many retirees will ever make is simply to refuse to look at that account clearly and to start steering it on purpose, calmly, year by year, while there is still time. You do not need to be wealthy. You do not need to be an expert. You only need to understand what that account really is, and to act while the window is still open. If this opened your eyes today, here's what I would love for you to do. Tap the like button so more people discover what that account really is before the bomb goes off. And if you are not subscribed yet, subscribe right now, because the next thing the system will never bother to explain is already on its way, and I want you to hear it here first. And if you want to go deeper and understand exactly how this applies to your own accounts, go grab the Retiree's AI Research Guide over at kevinretires.shop. It walks you through how to research your own retirement and tax questions so you can ask the right things before you ever sit down with a professional. And again, to be completely clear, it does not replace a good accountant or financial advisor, and it is not meant to. It is simply a tool to help you understand the moving parts and walk in informed instead of in the dark. The link is waiting for you in the description. Take care of yourself, understand what you really own, and remember, the IRS is counting on you to do nothing. The most powerful thing you can do is prove them wrong while the window is still open. I will see you in the next one.